Hello, everyone, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Anan Hafez, and I'm a junior studying government and economics from Elliott House, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the forum for the 2021 year. This entire month, we've been striving to engage our students and the broader Harvard community in the people and stories that inspire us to reflect and rejoice in Black History Month. For the past 40 years, the goal of the forum has always been to encourage students to take up John F. Kennedy Jr.'s call to action and to consider trailblazing careers in public service. Tonight is no different, as we cover the unique journeys of African American achievement at the intersection of public service and science, with all the sweet successes and distinct challenges along the way. It is my honor to introduce our guests for this evening, NASA astronaut Dr. Jeanette J. Epps and Charles F. Bolden Jr., Major General of the United States Marine Corps and the 12th NASA Administrator. Dr. Jeanette Epps earned her bachelor's degree in physics in 1992 from Lemoyne College in her hometown of Syracuse, New York. She completed a master's degree in science in 1994 and a doctorate in aerospace engineering in 2000, both from the University of Maryland, College Park. While earning her doctorate, Epps was a NASA graduate student researchers project fellow. After completing graduate school, she worked in a research laboratory for more than 2 years, co-authoring several patents before the Central Intelligence Agency recruited her. She spent 7 years as a CIA technical intelligence officer before selection as a member of the 2009 astronaut class. This year, Dr. Epps is slated to make history as the first Black woman crew member to work and live on the International Space Station, joining astronauts Sunita Williams and Josh Cassada on the Boeing Starliner 1 set to launch later this year. Major General Charles F. Bolden Jr.'s 34-year career with the Marine Corps also included 14 years as a member of NASA's astronaut office. After joining the office in 1980, he traveled to orbit 4 times aboard the space shuttle between 1986 and 1994, commanding 2 of the missions and piloting 2 others. His flights included deployment of the Hubble Space Telescope and the first joint US-Russian shuttle mission, which featured a cosmonaut as a member of his crew. In 2009, General Bolden was nominated by President Barack Obama and confirmed by the US Senate as the 12th administrator of NASA and the first African American to fill that role. Also, in 2013, he was the first human being to have his voice broadcast on Mars. We are clearly in the virtual presence of some truly exceptional people, and I hope their stories bring some warmth to all your hearts, especially following a really cold week in Houston, Texas. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all those in Texas who are struggling in the aftermath of last week's freezing temperatures. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy tonight's conversation. But before we begin, with a little help from NASA, we have a special guest appearing from an out-of-this-world location.
To everyone at the Institute of Politics at the Harvard Kennedy School and the JFK Jr. Forum, greetings from the International Space Station. I'm NASA astronaut Victor Glover. Many scientists, engineers, inventors, and astronauts work and live to find solutions to the world's most challenging problems. However, those breakthroughs must be pursued by and serve every community. Inclusivity matters, particularly in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, where Black people continue to be underrepresented. We must work to create a world where biology, engineering, technology, and exploration are mainstream words in homes and communities of color, and all Black students can envision themselves as scientists, doctors, engineers, and even astronauts. That also means highlighting Black Americans' challenges and successes as they forge paths in public service and science. While we must know and remember our legacy of historical struggles and achievements, it is important that we recognize that this legacy reaches up to us right here and right now. Our guests tonight, for example, NASA astronauts Dr. Jeanette Epps and Major General Charlie Bolden, are prime examples of our legacy of achievement and good friends of mine. In addition, you, the Harvard students in the audience, you are the bow wave of this legacy. You inspire countless young learners from your communities, showing them that all people can grow up to become successful adults in any career. I think the power of this legacy is why so many of us choose careers and civic activities that emphasize outreach, teaching, and mentoring. This Black History Month, I want you to think about both public service and STEM opportunities. Let's explore together to encourage as many generations as we can to reach for the stars. Thank you.
I love it. And it may be that somebody's telling me I should start talking. So I'm going to do that. I am Charlie Bolden, and as a member of the Senior Advisory Committee of the Institute of Politics, that's the first time I've ever had a chance to say that. As a member of the Senior Advisory Committee of the Institute of Politics, I want to welcome all of you here tonight. And, you know, Anand, I really want to thank you for your hosting all of this. And thanks to everybody there at the Institute that made this possible. And to you, Jeanette, who has come through, we thought hurricanes were the worst thing we could face down there in Houston. Nobody ever thought that you'd be driven out of your house by snow and ice and that kind of stuff. But glad to have you here with us.
Thank you, Jeff.
Somebody told me one time, be careful who you speak after. And I am learning very quickly that you don't want to speak after Ike or Victor.
I agree. He's awesome.
Victor Glover. Victor is a good friend of Jeanette's and mine, and we're both watching him. I'm flying with him vicariously since I probably won't have another opportunity to do it. But I want to point out one really important thing, and I don't know whether Jeanette knows this or not. Frequently when you're asked about being the first of something, I tell people it doesn't count. Because unless there's a second and a third and a fourth, then, you know, why are we doing it? And Ike it took 26 years for somebody to sit in the pilot seat of a NASA spacecraft between my last flight in 1994 and Victor's flight this year. And I am so happy to say that it won't be 26 years before we have another African-American astronaut on the International Space Station, because Jeanette is slated to kind of go there within months of Ike's time. I'm going to try to divide, since I'm supposed to be the moderator here, that means I'm supposed to be in charge. And before Jeanette takes over from me, we decided we're going to try to divide the evening, at least the question and answer, my part of it, into three parts. So first thing is Jeanette, I want to talk about personal inspirations and influences. So think back a little bit to your childhood, if you can, and talk to us a little bit about what kinds of things, or what people, more importantly, inspired and influenced you.
Well, so there were many things that influenced me and my sister. First of all, our parents weren't scientists or engineers, but they heavily encouraged us to read a lot. And we weren't allowed to watch much television, but when we did, we watched a lot of public television. And so we grew up watching things like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. Vegetable Soup was another big one, and Electric Company. And so because we had parents that encouraged us to do anything we wanted, and we were never told that you can't do that because you're a girl, or you can't do that because you're a brown girl. Whatever we wanted to do, our mom kind of really encouraged us to go for it. And she really did. She was a stay-at-home mom for her first 5 kids. And then for Janet and me, she started working and going back to school. And then, you know, she basically raised Janet and me as we were the youngest. And so her encouragement was that, look, through education, you can do anything. And whatever it is you want to be, with if you put the time and effort into that, there's nothing you can't do. If it's something that you're passionate about, you're going to get to the point where everything that you don't know, which is so hard, becomes easy because you learn it.
Yeah.
And so those were the big things that encouraged us to continue on, even though my mom had no clue what it was that we wanted to do. She like physics. She never said, why do you want to do that? She just really encouraged us to continue on, whatever it is you want to do, and never once it hindered us. And, you know, it breaks my heart because I do hear a lot of stories from people where they say that, well, a teacher said this to me when I was a kid, or, you know, my dad said this when I was a kid, and so I didn't pursue it. And that breaks my heart because it's always that there's one way to discourage, well, you can discourage a kid from moving forward, but there's one thing you can do. If you say positive things to a kid, you never know. It could be that one thing that keeps them moving forward, that propels them, you know, to the moon. And so, you know, language like that, growing up with people, and especially in Syracuse, New York, who were very encouraging for Janet and me. They saw that we had a little bit of talent and they encouraged us. We watched a lot of public television. So for us, you know, nothing was a limit. we pursued everything.
Great. Hey, let me, when you were growing up, space was not foreign. Think back to the early days of space exploration, both human and robotic. And what impact did it have on you growing up in what was sort of, might be even called the beginning of the space age?
Wow. So as a kid, I loved science fiction. So robots were always just like, wow, it's just the coolest thing. Star Trek, where you see people on the screen that you're talking to over the phone. And so the robotic missions to me were like at the edge of imagination. That was like the supreme thing. And thinking about all the lunar missions that we had before Apollo and how that set us up for success on the moon, because we really didn't know what the surface of the moon was like until we sent all of these robotic missions to the moon. We mapped out the moon, and that gave our guys a really good idea of what they're gonna see when they get there. But for me, the robotic missions are only part of the story. I like the idea of having someone go out first without danger, really, because the robots really, we can't put them in danger the way we can put a human being, but they can scout out the place, they can do all the reconnaissance for us. But I know that when we get there, we're gonna find a bunch of surprises. And so it's that symbiotic kind of relationship with robotics and humans working together to get the whole story. Okay. And so
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but that's to me is the best way to do it. You just can't have a robot go out, and you can program them to do one thing, and that's what they're going to do. But if they see something off to the side, they're not going to go do that because they're not programmed to do that. But if you send a human being, we can do that.
Yeah, because human beings don't pay attention to what people tell them to do.
Yes.
And it's interesting that when you talk to some of the folk especially at Jet Propulsion Labs, where that's the home of curiosity and perseverance, and even they will tell you that if a human had been on Mars for as long as Curiosity has now, we would probably have walked the entire planet. But I have a quick personal question here. You work for the CIA. Now that means to me you're a spy. So what in the world, what does, well, that's what my wife would say, and I'd have to tell her, don't say that. But what in the world is a technical intelligence officer? Tell me what were your duties as a technical intelligence officer with the CIA?
Well, it's interesting because some people don't know that, CIA, we do research too, along with all the other things, because, we have to collect intel, we have to collect things. And as a scientist also, we can do the reverse engineer on other things as well. And so like I could look at materials and say, well, that's probably made of this. And if we test it, it probably has this amount of strength and it's probably doing this. And so as a technical intelligence officer, you're doing multiple things. You are a reverse engineer. You're developing new things and new ways to collect information. And you're working closely with all aspects of the agency so that we can produce the most timely and most accurate information to the executive branch of the government. And it's a huge responsibility. And I don't think that I've worked with more professionals in the last 11 years and, working here at NASA and the CIA, just incredibly professional people who want to serve their country. And that's the crux of everything that we would do at the agency, is that we wanted to make sure that our president, all our leaders, the entire executive branch of the government had the most timely information to make a judgment and allocate funds for whatever they needed. Great. And so that was our big job. How do we get the information that the decision makers need?
Good. I'm going to slip on to part 2 of our discussion, and I want to come up to today. So let's talk a little bit about current activities and what you're doing, because I'm a big fan of I flew my last flight with Sergei Krikalev, Russian cosmonaut, and so we're old buddies and partners and everything. And I think you and I share the same belief that we work so incredibly well with them that it's kind of hard to understand why we can't have better diplomatic relationships. But tell me a little bit about your current activities in the astronaut office as you prepare for this flight, and share with us some of the challenges, some of the things that you have found to be very difficult, but you found a way to overcome them.
Okay. Well, to start out a little bit, so I did do all of the training in Russia for the right seat of the Soyuz. And that was an amazing experience. And so we trained for different vehicles. And so all the training that I did for the Soyuz, it doesn't translate over to the Boeing Starliner. So now I'm doing the training for the Boeing Starliner. So there's a lot of proprietary things that are going on there, but really for that training, it hasn't ramped up as much yet, but it's gonna get really busy soon. And so in the meantime, what I'm doing is I'm doing all of the International Space Station studies, all of the research that we'll do. We're doing EVA. I'll likely be one of the people that helps suit Sonny and Josh and do a spacewalk. And so we got to learn all of that because it can be very, very complicated. We may have some robotic missions that come up. And so there's a lot to the training right now. And then going back to some of the Soyuz stuff, some of the things we had to do there included water survival. We had to do winter survival. We won't have to do that for Boeing, not the way we did for Russia. Some of the training we did in Russia was because they had these flights that went off course that either landed in water or in Siberia. So the training was much more austere, to say the least. And but my colleagues in Russia were awesome, and they got me through all the training. And one of the nicest things, like at our lunch before we left Star City to go to Kazakhstan, Alexander Samakutayev, one of the cosmonauts, said to me, "Dear Jeanette, I wish you good luck." And he gave this speech at the final lunch that was just, it warmed my heart, because to me that meant that, all these months of training, it's not so much I proved myself, but they came to believe in me and trust me as a crew member, and they welcomed me in. And one of the nicest things that Sergei Prokopyev did, who was the final commander, he let me select the exam card. And that to me was a great honor. So we went through that exam, and when we finished, he said, "You picked a great card, Jeanette. You're good luck for us." And so we passed our exams, and we were all happy. And so Russia was awesome. But now I have two great crew members, and Josh and Sonny. And so two of the funniest people I've had the chance to work with. Unfortunately, this is the first time I've worked with them. But it's been great, and we're having a great time. In fact, this week we're going to head to Florida to do some training together. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
One of the things that I would imagine from my experience going back and forth to Russia, I never saw a woman, a female cosmonaut while I was over there. And I don't think there are very many, if any, right now. Was it difficult for you when you first got there, being maybe the only woman in the astronaut/cosmonaut corps? Did you feel you had to do something extra to prove yourself or to demonstrate that you belonged?
And it's strange, but I didn't feel that way. I felt like if I did my job, that they would see that I'm serious about doing the work and that I can do the work. And in fact, there is a female cosmonaut now, Anna Kikina, and she's doing the winter training. I saw some videos of her doing winter training recently. So she's in the Corps. She's one of the newer ones. But prior to that, it was in 2014, it was Yelena Serova. But there's still very, very few. And so Russia, even though they were first to fly a woman, Valentina Tereshkova, they don't have a legacy of sustaining that. But when I went over there, I never got the impression that they had an issue with me. I think that as I worked through all the classes and I passed the exams and did everything that was asked of me, even the centrifuge, which was a lot of fun, the winter survival, the water survival, going through everything, I think I developed a rapport with them where I really just became one of the crew members. And I wasn't the female astronaut, I wasn't the Black female astronaut, I was one of the crew. And that to me was priceless, because that's how they treated me. I was like one of the crew. And I think I told you the story that as the crew, we got invited to Yuri Gagarin's banya. And that was a big honor for me.
Now you have to tell everybody what a banya is, so they'll know. What's a banya?
Well, it is a sauna of sorts. Well, it's a sauna of sorts that Yeah, it's a sauna of sorts, and what they do is they hang out together, and they have a mini party for the crew together, and we all kind of chat and drink. And there's a sauna in the room, but you know, sometimes they have the eucalyptus leaves, and you know, it's really medicinal, but it's really a party. It's really a party of sorts. Great. To celebrate the crew.
Now, do you have time to look at what's going on?
A party of sorts. It really is a party.
Do you have time now to look at what's going on?
I'm sorry, say that again.
No, I was saying, do you have time now to kind of look at what Victor and the crew on station are doing? And is there any one experiment or group of experiments that you're chomping at the bit, you know, to get to? You really want to do gene sequencing, or you want to do 3D printing, or is there anything special you want to do?
Well, it's funny because my twin sister, she was a molecular cell biologist. She still is, but she works at the Patent and Trademark Office. And so she sees all of that stuff. So for years, we've been talking about stem cell research and, you know, growing cells 3D, and, you know, as they would grow in the body, because, you know, pretty much in the body, they're growing sort of weightless. And so how would we grow cells? How do we do some of these stem cell research and genetics on orbit? You know, that's kind of like the big thing. My sister, what she did in graduate school was she was looking at the eye gene and try to figure out where the eye genes were on the genome, on the human genome and all that. And so that was a lot of fun for her. And so she's been talking about that for years. And so that to me would be a lot of fun, but also watching these guys do those spacewalks, that's pretty exciting. I'm so proud and so happy for Ike. He makes it look easy, even though I know it's pretty hard. It is a long day. It is physical and it's very mental. And so watching those guys make it look easy is just phenomenal.
You know, I know what the answer is, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How long is a typical EVA on the station today?
Okay, typically they're only 6.5 hours. I know only, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's a whole day's work.
It's a whole, well, but that's just the spacewalk part. They have to get up early and they have to purge all the nitrogen out of the suit. They have to get rid of it as much as they can out of their bodies. And that's like almost a 4-hour process to get through that just to go outside. And then you got 6 hours outside. So it's a 10+ hour day every time. So even though they say it's only 6.5 hours, that 6.5 hours could actually grow to 7.5, depending on the levels of their consumables in their suit, be it, you know, carbon dioxide scrubbing, water, oxygen, you know, things like that. But, you know, your body may become exhausted early, and because it is one of the most mentally and physically challenging things that we do on orbit. Even here on Earth, it's the same.
I got it. Before we close out part 2 here, let me ask you to kind of put on your thinking hat, and from what you've seen so far and what you've done in training, what do you think are some of the opportunities that the space environment, that microgravity provide to us to bring benefits back here to the planet, to humanity? And there may be from human space flight, it could be from the science we're doing, or from anything, but just because people always, you've heard it as much as I have, why are we spending all this money in space when we've got homeless people and hungry people to feed?
Well, so there's so many ways to answer this, but first of all, the biggest thing for me is having a space exploration program doesn't take money the way people think, because having that program actually creates jobs. It increases the interest in STEM, and that helps boost the country in a lot of ways. It helps us develop new technologies. Like, we probably wouldn't have GPS if we didn't have a space program. The way we prepare certain foods, we wouldn't be able to send those things over to our military guys and have it last so long if we didn't have a space program. There's so many things that we get from just having a space exploration program. And I think the biggest thing that people should think about is how many jobs are created just having a space exploration program. And then for me, you know, the things that we get from space, just having the program itself, the things that we learn, I think once people understand that when we take away the force of gravity and we look at the way things really are, and that's what people don't really realize, that everything here on Earth is being impacted by the force of gravity. Like water. In space, you look at water, it's surface tension that dominates. And so it's not this flat kind of amorphous thing that we see here on Earth. It's these big round bubbles or these little tiny bubbles. And so when you understand that, you start thinking about, well, then how does it impact my cells? How does it impact bacteria? How does it impact viruses? You know, what does it do to the cell structure, the mitochondria, everything that's inside the cell? How does it impact that? And how does it change? And so when you start looking at things the way they really are without the force of gravity, you can understand it better. And then you could develop better countermeasures, like looking at the human body in space and understanding that some genes turn on and some genes turn off. We can develop countermeasures so that the human body can live longer outside of the Earth's protection. And that means that we can live longer on the moon. We may have to develop habitats. We may have to develop medical countermeasures the way we did for osteoporosis. So osteoporosis was a big concern because in space, you take away gravity, your bones no longer have a reason to grow because they're not being impacted and force isn't being applied to it. And so how do you combat osteoporosis or bone density loss? Well, we exercise on orbit, but you can also take biphosphonates. You can use a medical countermeasure for that. And so in the future, hopefully we'll see more research done on the International Space Station and maybe even on the moon, where you're looking at the true nature of medical countermeasures. How can we use this in the body, develop better materials to get everything to last longer outside of the Earth's protection? So I think that having the space program, we're understanding more and more things, the human body. We're understanding that, like salmonella, we know it becomes more virulent in space because if you take away the force of gravity, things change. We can develop a better countermeasure for that as well. So there's different things that we learn that help us back here on Earth, big time. And there's too many to even count right now that I don't know about right now, I should say. We can count them, but I don't know about right now. But there's so many ways that we're helped by just having a space exploration program here in this country.
Got it. And one question here before we take a few from the audience. I'm not finished, but I want to let some of the audience get in. And I know you had a few you wanted to ask. You know, you alluded to the fact that astronauts in space have to exercise because with gravity not being there, they're in a gravity environment, but because they're going so fast, they've got this centrifugal force competing with gravity. Do you exercise, or how long will you have to exercise each day, or is it once or twice a week, or what do you envision as your exercise regimen when you get up there?
Well, for me, I'm hoping that to exercise every day. I mean, lifting weights and loading your bones that way, is we're in space, it's a resistive device. And so there's kind of like a different way to lift weights. But doing the squats and deadlifts and loading the major bones of your body, we've seen people come back with virtually no loss. I mean, you still have the inner ear issue because you take away gravity and then there's no up, down, left, there's always left and right, but there's no up or down. so you're kind of like, your inner ear kind of goes crazy. So you always have that when you come back to Earth, but your body will be extremely healthy. And so, those are the things that we're seeing with exercising nearly every day, probably maybe 6 at the minimum, 6 times a week. And, we do a little cardio. We have the little bicycle it's basically just the pedals. And then we have a treadmill. And so I like to run. That's going to be another way to kind of load your bones as well. So I think exercising almost 6 to 7 times a week, most people come back and virtually no impact on the physical. I mean, may have other issues due to the fluid shift, but when you get back, your recovery is likely much, much faster.
Got it. Now, I was trying to stall so that you wouldn't have a chance to ask me questions, but they told me to quit. And so they said, let Jennifer ask some of her, Jeanette ask some of her questions. So against my better judgment, I'm gonna throw it over to you for a question or two, maybe one.
I think, okay, if I can get two in, and I'll just kind of span your illustrious career. You've had a great career, General, and it's just.
I told you I wasn't gonna talk to you.
Charlie, I'm sorry. You've had a great career, and you started at the Naval Academy, and I wanted to know, what was it like going to the Naval Academy in the '60s, and do you still have friends that you keep in touch with from then? Knowing your personality, I'm sure you do.
I'm out of the great class of '68, and we were at the height of the civil rights era. I keep telling people that sometimes my mother used to say the more things change, the more they remain the same. So when I went to the Naval Academy in 1964, the year prior, President Kennedy had been assassinated. My senior year, we lost the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy. So they were pretty turbulent times for the country. The Naval Academy is at Annapolis, the capital of Maryland. And the academy was like an island, because it was this beautiful campus in the middle of this segregated city. So even though, for me, it was comfortable because I had grown up in the segregated South. For a lot of, there were not a lot, because there were only 7 of us in my class out of 1,400 when I first got there. So the kids from Chicago had a really hard time. They thought they could go around like they did in Chicago. When you go outside the gate, you were in the South for all intents and purposes. I hated it when I first got there. I'd wanted to go to the Naval Academy since I was 12 years old, since I was in 7th grade. And when I got there, I'd been fooled by a program called Men of Annapolis, where I saw the beautiful uniforms and all the girls coming to the campus and all that stuff. So that's what lured me in. And I got there and I found that, boy, this is like being back in the South. People don't want me here. There were only 7 of us, as I said. And by the end of my plebe year, my freshman year, we were down to 4. And the 4 of us stayed together for the rest of the 4 years. And we've now lost one, my best man, a guy named Buddy Clark from Chicago. But the other 3 of us stay in pretty close contact. Frank Simmons, who, like you, was a spy, but Frank was with the Naval Security Group. He was a Russian linguist, and he gets really upset when my wife calls him a spy, but he wasn't. But he lives right in Maryland, so we talk a lot. So the friendships that were formed back then, most of them last until now. I'm well over my 50th anniversary now from the Naval Academy, but like you said, you find things that you have in common with your classmates. You play sports. You're on a lot of different activities, and so you make do. And people, I found that people, just as you said about the Russians, people begin to see that you can perform, and they come around to respecting you. It's not a matter of you demanding anything, but the other word I use is you command by your actions. You show them that you can perform, and they accept you pretty well. So that's it. Okay, maybe you can get one more question in.
Okay, well, my last question was, out of your 4 spaceflight missions, out of your 4 spaceflight missions, what was your favorite moment or your most memorable moment?
Ooh, I get asked that question quite a bit. And interestingly, Jeanette, I don't have a favorite moment or a most memorable moment. I have a favorite period of time, and it was the 2 years training for my final flight, and it was very special because I knew it was going to be my last flight. My family and I had talked about it. You don't know how many more times you're going to fly. You may think right now you're going to fly till you die or something like that, but my family called me in one night and they said, "Hey, what are you going to do when you grow up?" And I had already had 3 flights, and I said, well, I hadn't really thought about it. And they said, well, make this your last, because you're having a good time, but we get scared every time you fly, and we want this to be it. So I knew it was going to be my last flight, and it was very difficult because every evolution I did, I knew would be my last time doing that particular training evolution. And I'm a very emotional person anyway. You've seen me cry before. I cry like a little baby. So my crew got used to seeing me weep After we did, we do something and I would know that's the last time I'm going to do that. It's the last time I'm going to go to the Cape for a countdown demonstration test. And it was really hard. But the part that made it so rich was I had two Russian cosmonauts, Sergei Krikalev and Vladimir Titov. And we brought the two of them with their families from Moscow, from Star City, Russia, to Houston, Texas. And imagine, I mean, I don't know what Houston is like now because we've been away for a while, but 1980s in Houston, Houston was still Houston back then. Still difficult racially and other kinds of things. And so we brought them into this incredibly strange culture, but to watch them adjust to our culture, to watch their kids, because Sergei had a 4-year-old daughter. Vladimir had 2 kids. His son was Yuri, who was 8. He had a daughter who was Marina, was 18, and had come over before them to enroll in junior college. The only 2 that spoke English were Marina, and Sergei. Sergei was a fluent English speaker. The rest of them didn't speak any English. And we watched them adjust. And Yuri, for example, it took Yuri about 6 months to have a big Texas belt buckle, a cowboy hat, and he was speaking fluent Texan. So, but going through that experience with them, and then finally having a chance at the end of our mission, almost 2 years later, to go to Russia and visit their culture and get an opportunity to see how they lived. It was just so rich that's what I count as my most cherished experience. It's something that I shall never forget.
Wow. Wow. And I'd imagine that you had a great time with Sergei and I'm surprised you didn't say that Moscow, Slizan Moskva ne verит, because Moscow doesn't believe in tears, because that's what Sergei Prokopiev said to me when we watched the launch together. He said, we don't.
That's the one thing I found. I learned the hard way. They have a lot of customs and superstitions,
yes,
that are kind of foreign to us. Things like it was always funny when you walk out to the vehicle with the crew on launch morning. I mean, there are people out there like it's just another day all around the vehicle, where when we launch, there's nobody within miles of the vehicle, but the Russians don't do that,
No, they're very close, very close.
Anything that Yuri Gagarin did becomes, you got to do it. So, Yuri Gagarin stopped to pee on the tire of
yes.
of the crawler. So every astronaut after that, male or female, has to stop to pee on the tire because Yuri did it. So,
bring a bottle of water. That's what I said.
Well, I tell you what, we've got a student, I think it's Jenny from Harvard College, who wants to ask you a question. So Jenny,
okay.
Fire away. Hey, there you are, Jenny.
Hello. Hi, my name's Jenny.
Hi,
I'm
Jenny.
a sophomore at the college right now. I think space exploration is just so cool as like a concept and also a symbol too. And I'm curious for both of you actually, what does space exploration mean to you personally? How has it changed over the course of your career? And also a side question is, how has it changed how you view the world or how you view yourself?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, for me, space exploration is, to me, I don't want to say it's everything. I think everything we do in space exploration is about life here on Earth. We're looking at climate change right now. We're looking at new energy techniques and methods, and going to space can only enhance a lot of that. Going to the moon and developing a presence on the moon and staying there can only help. And for me as a kid, and even now, science fiction just helps me imagine a world where, like on Star Trek, where there's no race, there's no gender that's a limitation. It's just people living together and working towards a common goal and a mission. And so space exploration contributes to all of that. Imagination, living together as one, moving the whole society forward. And so there's a lot to space exploration, and no industry is untouched by it. So to me, there's so much that we can do at having the space exploration program and leading the world really to get back to the moon and stay there. And then from there, get back to Mars. Well, get to Mars after Perseverance landed there.
joining some of the robots.
Yes, that's
Been here
right.
for 50 years.
Join the robots. Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Jenny. Aaron, is it ABI? Aaron's the president. Oh man, Aaron, you're the president of the Society of Black Scientists and Engineers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
You're a heavy hitter.
Great. That's awesome, Aaron.
Thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. And I'm studying biology, so I was really interested to hear what you were talking about, Dr. Epps, with sort of biological research in space. That sounds super, super fascinating. So yeah, I have a question for both of you. As the president of HSBSE, or the Society of Black Scientists and Engineers, we talk a lot about the underrepresentation of Black people in STEM, in all disciplines of STEM. I care a lot about medicine, but you know, we don't see very Black astronauts as well. So I think it's awesome to be in conversation with both of you who are very much so trailblazers in your fields. So I sort of wanted to ask a broad question. I wanted to see what your guys' thoughts were on the importance of representation of Black people in STEM, but also what limitations there are. Like, is it enough, do you think, to have representation, or what more is needed? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
You first, Jeanette.
Okay. Well, so I always go back to my upbringing with my twin sister, and we didn't have parents that showed us the way. We kind of selected to do this, and we had the encouragement of our parents. But I do know that there are a lot of kids who don't know that this is an option for them. And so I think representation and information, I think a lot of things that we do, we have to let students know that this is an option for you and you can do it. And we have to support them to do that. Because a lot of times there's not the support to do that. And, you know, I was a very shy girl. I was very fortunate that I had people that allowed me to be shy and pulled me forward out of my shyness. And so having that kind of support is very important, because you will have people say, well, you can't do this because you're a girl. You can't do this because you're a Black female. My parents never told me that, so I never believed these people. And so having that support system and that support structure that allows you to be that, to become the thing that you desire is very important. So I think representation and support are needed urgently.
You know, I would echo what Jeanette says. I'm a preacher of three things: diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I think they're absolutely vital for any successful organization. The best organizations in which I've been involved are those that have a diverse makeup, not just in sex, race, gender, you know, sexual persuasion or anything else, but diversity of ideas. And that's when I talked about the reward of getting to know Sergei's culture. And when Jeanette talks about being able to live in Russia and train with them, it's because they do things a little bit differently than we do. Their system of training and operating is different than ours. And when you put the best of the Russian system together with the best of American system, you come out with something that's really, really super. And it has allowed the International Space Station, for example, to thrive and to excel for the last 20 plus years. So if I want to get to that diversity and inclusion that I like, representation becomes critical, because, you know, you as a scientist / engineer, you know, if you don't know something exists, you don't even know to ask for it. I used to, when I first became the NASA administrator, I talked to President Obama before he decided to nominate me, and he used the term inspire kids. Always talked about inspiring kids. And so when I became the NASA administrator, I had an education conference early on and brought in college presidents and other people. And one of the attendees was a young Black student who was the president of his local chapter of NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers. And I kept talking about inspiring Black youth. And he raised his hand and he said, you know, if I hear you say inspire one more time, I'm gonna puke. And I mean, I just kind of jumped back. I said, geez, this is a daring young man. And I said, okay, Mr. Jones, or whatever his name was, why do you say that? He said, well, I agree that we need to inspire kids, but until we inform them, until we expose them and let them know what's available, we can't get them inspired about that. They've got to be able to see something. And I know a lot of people like to say, I did it on my own. Well, I got news for you. Nobody does it on their own. Everybody's they've seen someone, so they've had the representation. The mistake I think we make is that we believe that representation has to look like me. It really helps if it looks like me. But every once in a while, the person who is is an image of somebody that I want to be like. I became a Marine because of my first company officer at the Naval Academy, who was a young Marine Corps major, who was an infantry officer. But he was like my dad. He was tough, but eminently fair. And when I got ready to graduate from the Naval Academy 4 years later, although I had said I will never go in the Marine Corps, I looked back and I said, I want to be like him. I want to be like Major John Riley Love. And we became friends for life after that. But representation is absolutely critical, because you've got to have somebody, that makes you say, I want to be like that, or I want to do what they did. So thanks very much, Aaron. And I think Noah is coming on. And Noah, I think I don't know you, but you're famous, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think are you the first Black student body president at Harvard in the history of the school from 16, whatever it is?
First Black man, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a woman in
That's
2000.
okay. That's
But
okay.
no, yeah. So thank you so much.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And my question is kind of related to that. I know, especially during Black History Month, we make a lot of the Black firsts, of the world. And I was drawn to really something you said, Major General, especially referring to the first doesn't matter if there's not a second, third, fourth. And so as underrepresented as African Americans are in this field, I was wondering what you two have done specifically to ensure that, even though you might have been the first to do something, that you're not the last.
I think it's critical. And, as I tried to say earlier, and Victor Glover and I have made a deal. It's as soon as he gets back, we're going to join forces, and we're going to make sure that we go out and find a way to help NASA identify people of color, female, male, I don't care, but who are pilots, so that we can bring them in. We do a relatively good job of identifying scientists and engineers, and every once in a while a doctor, but we do a horrible job at identifying pilots who could come in. And while there's very little difference today in what a pilot or somebody else has to do, because most of the spacecraft are pretty much autonomous, and the crew is along just in case something goes wrong. But I just think it's absolutely critical that we take it on ourselves to go and make sure that someone follows in our footsteps.
Well, I definitely agree with that, General. I'm Charlie. The big thing is that to ensure that there's someone following, this follows on to the previous question. We got to let children and teens and young adults know what are the options that you have. You have to know that this is an option. And not only is this an option, these are the things that you're going to have to do when you get there. Are you willing to do that? Is this something you really want? And that's one way that we can do it. But we can also do things like partner with other people and identify those people who are willing and can do the job and bring them forward. I know many people who can do the job that I'm doing. I would love to see them as astronauts. And we can identify them and help them through the process. And, hopefully you never know what's going to happen in the end. But definitely being a proponent and out there and letting kids know these are the options. And then when we identify that they want this, we encourage them, and we also bring them in and let them know what the process is to actually get into the astronaut corps. Because it's not really clear. Like, one of the things I noticed is that people constantly ask me, well, what kind of training do you do while you wait for a mission? And the fact that people didn't know that we do Russian language training, we do analog missions like live underwater or live in a cave. We do a lot of flying of the T-38, and we do a lot of really, really cool things. And so my big thing is I want kids to know what it is that we do, and that I'm doing these things. If I'm doing these things, they can do this too. And so I want to identify those kids who want it and they want to come out and do it, and then show them what the process is and get them involved that way as well.
Noah, thanks so much for your question, and congratulations again. And I know you will not be the last.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you both.
Anthea, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So if I'm not, please correct me. But I think Anthea's coming with another question here. I think.
Yes, sorry.
You're coming. All right. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, my name's Anthea Jolly. It's Belgian, and I'm actually calling in from Scotland. I'm very sorry. I've only got my bedside lights on, so I don't wake up my parents. But I'm so excited to have heard you guys tonight. You're both so inspirational, and I feel very lucky to have heard your stories. I'm really interested in what exploration of space symbolizes, not only with like what we've already spoken about tonight with, I guess, kind of like trailblazers in space, and also what it represents for countries as kind of like a benchmark almost. But I'm also interested in like what it means for science. I'm like an absolute science nerd, and I honestly just like love it for itself. And I think there's so many things that space exploration can bring to Earth, and so many like practical applications that it has. But I also think it's kind of an amazing thing to be exploring things which don't affect ourselves, and to kind of have this acknowledgement of things much like larger than ourselves, and to have this appreciation of it. So I wonder how you guys kind of explored that and how that relates to your appreciation of science today. Thank you.
Ooh, thanks very much for the question. You want to give it a shot, Jeanette?
Oh, sure, because her excitement is my excitement too, because
I know.
Well, I just get so excited because I love to watch these science fiction shows. Like there's this great show called The Expanse. And what they do is they like to try to take real science topics and try to figure out how we would handle them. Like what would happen to a human body if they lived out in the belt and they were mining the belt for ice? What would happen to the human body if they lived on Mars or the moon and then tried to come back to Earth? And so for space exploration, for me, and what it means in the future is we're just going to discover so much more. We're going to discover, like we've just had so many great gravitational waves and all these different new discoveries that we have had in the past few years. We're just going to discover so many new things out there. We're going to discover how the human body can last. We're going to discover how the human body changes. And that to me is going to be huge. And then when it comes to like developing new propulsion systems to get us further and further into space faster, there's a saying that, there's likely life out there, but we're limited by travel. We can't get to each other. So hopefully we'll develop these new technologies, propulsion systems to get us out there. And so, I think for me, the technologies that we really, really have to develop are going to be, number one, propulsion, and number two, what kind of countermeasures are we going to develop for the human body to get us to, how can we live on the moon for say a year? What kind of countermeasures do we have to have? We're living at 1/6 gravity. How does the body change? How do we make it resilient to living in a place that is not friendly to human beings? And then the materials that we need to develop on top of that. So in the future, I think, we're on an upward trajectory in figuring out things and learning new things and how to, who knows, maybe, like we even have a photograph of a black hole now. That was unheard of, decades ago. That was just never going to happen. But think about how much we've advanced in the last 10, 15 years. I just think we're just on an upward trajectory to learn more and more and more.
Oops. The only thing I'll add, Anthea, is when you ask what else, here's what else I think it does. When I flew my third space shuttle mission, I had Belgium's Alan Shepard with me. Dirk Vermouth. Belgium had never had an astronaut before then, but on STS-45, we had Dirk. And he was actually a person who came in to substitute for one of our crew members who had come down with an illness and wasn't able to fly. And Dirk was absolutely phenomenal. And then Dirk was followed by Frank Devine, and he became the first Belgian to actually be a commander on the International Space Station. So yeah, I think maybe, I'm gonna guess 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I'm gonna look up and Antia Jolly is gonna be commanding a mission to the moon, or maybe getting ready to go to Mars or something like that. So great. Well, we're running out of time, but Jeanette, I will not let you out of here without one final bullet question. And you can throw your answer back to me real quickly, because it shouldn't take too long. Where are we going to be in the next 20 to 50 years? Not you and me, but where will, in terms of space flight and exploration and stuff?
I'd like to think in the next 20 years, we will have been on the moon for an amount of time, and we've developed a permanent presence there. And we're working on getting to Mars. And so in 50 years, I think we're going to develop another space station on Mars, a way station. And so I think that as the years go on, we're going to get further and further into space. And the technologies that we're going to develop are just going to blow us away. Great. And so I definitely think in 50 years, and we're not going to go like to the moon alone. We're going to go as the planet Earth, not just as the United States, but we're going to have a lot of friends go with us, the entire world. And so I think it's going to be an international effort. And I think the Mars effort is going to be an international effort too.
Thanks very much. Jeanette, you've been awesome tonight. I mean, they have Victor kick us off, and then listening to you, I'm pumped. So, before we let everybody go, though, I found a passage. It's part of the speech that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave when he received the Nobel Peace Prize on the 10th of December in 1964. And 1964 is pretty important for me because that's my graduation year from high school. But here it is, and I quote, he says, "Yet, in spite of these spectacular strides in science and technology, and still unlimited ones to come, something basic is missing. There's a sort of poverty of the spirit, which stands in glaring contrast to our scientific and technological abundance. The richer we have become materially, the poorer we have become morally and spiritually. We have learned to fly the air like birds and swim the sea like fish, but we've not learned the simple art of living together as brothers. We have amazing knowledge of vitamins, nutrition, the chemistry of food, and the versatility of the atom. There is no deficit in human resources. The deficit is in human will," unquote. So as we leave you tonight, I'd encourage all of you to take a little advice from Jeanette Epps when she talked about how important it is for us to find ways to work with people different than us, whether they be Americans or Russian or any other country, because that's really what's gonna make this world the best place, the greatest place that we know of, and everything. So I want to thank Nanda, Kathy, everybody for tonight. And I think I'm going to throw it back to, I don't know whether I'm throwing it back to the dean or who. Mark, there you are.
Yeah.
Throwing it back to Mark Guerin.
Well, thank you, Charlie, and Jeanette, thank you. Charlie, thank you for really closing on Dr. King's inspiring words, and how appropriate as we observe Black History Month that you shared that with us. And Jeanette, thank you so much for taking your time, for your own public service, for your commitment to the public good. This has been a really invigorating, fascinating conversations. The student questions are outstanding. And of course, we're grateful to Anand for kicking us off. So we are most grateful, and certainly grateful to Charlie for his service on our senior advisory committee as well. I just wanted to take a bit to remind our viewers about 3 forums we have next week that we invite you to. On Wednesday, March 3rd at 11:30, we'll have a discussion on nuclear safety and nuclear governance, where we'll have the International Atomic Energy Director General, Grossi, who will be here in conversation with the New York Times' David Sanger. And then on Thursday, March 4th, we will have Admiral Bill McRaven, who is, of course, the former commander of the U.S. Special Ops and the very thoughtful writer and thought leader. He will be in conversation with the Kennedy School's Dana Bourne. And then finally on Friday, March 5th at 1 o'clock, we will have a discussion on COVID-19. Last year, before the university closed due to the pandemic, Ironically, prophetically, our last forum was on the topic of COVID-19. So we have brought back the same panel, moderated by Rick Burke, who's the co-founder and executive editor of STAT. We'll be here with Professor Juliet Kayyem for the Kennedy School, Helen Branswell from STAT, and Dr. Michael Mina from the Harvard Chan School. So an interesting look back and a look ahead. Look back at the past year and look ahead. So we invite you to join us for any of those forums. It's all on our website. And again, to Charlie and to Jeanette for your inspiring journeys, for your commitment to space from the Kennedy School, which has, of course, such an interest in our heritage of what President Kennedy did for the space program and what he said. And certainly with the beautiful words you ended with, Charlie, of Dr. King. I thank you all and good night.